You're listening to Just Hit Play with your hosts, Peter and Nick Cabral. If you're tired of your stagnant, streamed music feed, then strap yourselves in for an intergenerational sonic journey through Peter and Nick's favorite songs.
Welcome to episode 68 of Just Hit Play. I'm your host, Peter. With me is my co-host, Nick. Nick, happy birthday. How's your week going?
Thank you. Feels good to be 22. My Taylor Swift year.
Yep.
It's been good. I've had a hectic week or so just with moving my house in Toronto and starting at a new school, new program. It's been a lot, but things are finally starting to settle down a bit. So happy about that.
Yeah, that's always the weird thing about your birthday. It's always around when school starts, so it's must have these mixed emotions for you of having your birthday, which is fun, but then having to go to school, which isn't always that much fun.
Yeah, it's always a turbulent time, to say the least. And yeah, like my birthday was on the first day of school this year, so I felt like I couldn't even really enjoy it that much because I was taking care of so much, and then I had to go to Walmart and IKEA with my roommates to get furniture for our house. So I can say though, I spent the evening of my birthday in an IKEA cafeteria eating hot dogs and Nordic fruit water.
Sure.
So that was like a moment of having the thought that I'm now old because that's how I spent my birthday.
Yeah, a lot more responsibilities, I guess, now that you're a grad student.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I also didn't really understand the meaning of when an apartment is unfurnished until we got here and I went to go take a shower and there were no shower curtains.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really unfurnished.
It's unfurnished.
Okay. And how do you find living downtown Toronto?
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Everything is just so close. 15-minute walk here in the city is completely different from a 15-minute walk in the suburban towns I've lived in my whole life. It's just fantastic, honestly.
It's funny, and I wish I was smarter because I'm definitely not smarter, but the song I picked for you is about, the hatred of big cities and the joy of living in small towns, which is quite ironic. I wish I had planned that out, but I hadn't. This is totally coincidental that I picked this song for this week.
I know it aligns pretty well though. I like how it matches up with what I've been going through recently.
Cool. And before we get into our music, let's talk to our sound engineer in Brisbane. Darren, how you doing?
I'm doing good. A little bit rainy, but good.
Yeah, a soft rain is falling outside. It's a little bit cooler today, which is brilliant. This is the kind of weather that I like.
Good stuff. Yeah, I love that weather too.
How's everything there? Is it starting to cool down?
Yes and no. It's still got the heat, but it's not unbearable as it was earlier in August. So can't complain.
Well, I'll be there in November. I'm going home to Canada for the month of November, so we'll have to figure out a time for me to hang out with you. I'll probably just get a hotel room downtown somewhere, and then we can record the podcast in your new place.
Yeah, live in person.
Yeah, that'd be weird but fun.
I think it'd be a lot of fun. I'm excited. Yeah, I hope
the
audience is too. For us in the same room, oh my goodness.
Yeah, geez. We can, instead of having to do verbal and so when the audio works, when the video works, having video cues, we can just, be 2 feet from each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. You ready to get into some music?
Absolutely.
Okay. So for this month, I came to the decision that I was playing you too many hits. That I was playing too many recognizable songs. And I wanted to change it up a little bit and play some songs that are a little bit more esoteric, a little bit more, not so much as hits, but just really cool songs from artists that I particularly love. And one of my favorite artists ever is Nick Cave. And one of my favorite songs by Nick Cave is a song called God is in the House. So we're going to listen to that. So Darren, just hit play.
We've laid the cables and the wires. We've split the wood and stoked the fires. We've lit out town so there is no place room to hide. Our little church is painted white.
So there's a few seconds of God is in the House by Nick Cave. One of my favorite Nick Cave songs. Not a big hit by any stretch of the imagination from Nick Cave. But tell me what you thought of the song.
I like this song a lot. It's got a chill, relaxing vibe to it with the keys and the strings. Really beautiful instrumental. That's probably my biggest takeaway, other than the lyricism of the song. It's just a really pleasant, nice song sonically. And then once you get into the lyrical side of things, which obviously is the point with Nick Cave, some really, really interesting stuff and interesting perspectives he's talking about. And I feel like I picked up on like the main message and theme of the song, but I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about it and maybe some more context on the song.
Yeah, I think it's one of those songs about how we sort of romanticize living in small towns and how perfect they are, and how big cities are sort of like, frightening, and there's a lot more crime, which is all true. But I think the line "God is in the house and one day he'll come out" is a really telling line, and it's pretty much, I think it's closer to the end of the song, because if you're waiting for God to come out, you might be waiting a bit of time. I just think it idealizes small town living, and it's funny, as I've gotten older, I've definitely enjoyed spending more time in rural sort of settings and not so much big cities. A couple of years ago, we did a road trip through America and Canada, and we went through Denver and Seattle, which is probably the bigger cities we were in. And while those were fine, we definitely did enjoy the time in the mountains and off the beaten path. So I think I'm falling under that category too. As I get a little bit older, I'm sort of enjoying being away from cities. So I wonder if he was going through a little bit of that himself when he wrote this song.
Yeah, that's essentially what I got from the song too. Just the us versus them mentalities as well, and thinking that sort of the opposite of the grass is always greener. Like everything's perfect where we are and everywhere else is bad. I think it's just a really good job of putting the sort of closed-minded thinking that can fester in small towns, because it really does act like an echo chamber when you're in a small community. That thinking, I think, is really prominent in this song. And what I thought Nick Cave did really well is, similar to Tom Waits, he does a very good job of using his vocal inflections to put meaning behind what the lyrics are. Like you can almost hear that he's smirking or sneering as he says these things. It's very tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic almost. It's really cool and gives the song that extra few layers of meaning beyond the surface level.
Yeah. There's a couple of interesting things about living in small towns. Some small towns have such strict codes of conduct. Like your house can only be painted a certain color. You can't have certain things on your lawn, just to keep up with aesthetics. And then in a weird fact that I found out a few years ago is that people who tend to vote for the Green Party, and the Green Party is pretty prominent here in Australia and where you are in Canada, all live in cities. Not many people who vote Green live in small towns. They tend to vote very Democratic or very conservative, mostly conservative. So it's a really weird dichotomy of living in the city, but yet yearning for environment by voting Green. And then living in these small towns and really voting a lot of times more conservative, because you want those really conservative values. If we look at the tropes of being a conservative, you're tough on crime and for free markets and things like that. So I always find that dichotomy a little bit interesting.
Well, I think what the quote-unquote small-town mentality is a lot of the time is tradition and keeping up appearances, which is very well reflected in the lyrics of the song, talking about painting everything white and just how everything is meant to be really put together. And it's, like you said about the standards for buildings and everything, the codes of conduct, it's all just really about appearances. And living in small towns, there's so much gossip, everybody knows everybody, and rumors fly, and if if one person does something to sort of stray from the way things are, quote unquote, supposed to be, everyone knows, and you get shunned for it or looked at differently. And so there's just not as much room for conflicting opinions in really small rural towns, in my experience.
Well, growing up in Streetsville was a very, very small town when I grew up. Streetsville is a town in a city called Mississauga. While Mississauga itself was a pretty big city, Streetsville felt like this little tiny little town. And you sort of grew up almost knowing everybody and not being much traffic, and the corner stores where everyone sort of went to get their fast products, maybe a loaf of bread or milk. I feel like I grew up in a small town, even though I grew up in a city of like 500,000 people. It felt that way growing up.
Yeah, and I'm sure you experienced that, a little bit of elitism or pretentiousness, in the sense of, we're just a smaller, close-knit community, and we've got these values and the tradition, and we don't have the issues of a big city. I feel like, and I'm just strictly shooting from the hip here, but I feel like there might almost be a bit of an inferiority complex in smaller towns.
Absolutely.
And just the need to always compare yourself to the big cities and say, sure, they have all these amenities and things to do and fun things and bars and restaurants and attractions, but we don't have crime, and our lawns are always nicely manicured, and our houses are painted the same color, and we value God, so we've got it better.
I love the line in the song where we breed all our kittens white so you can see them in the night. I love that line. It's so clever. It's pretty brilliant little line from Nick Cave.
And but they're not prejudiced because there's a woman.
Yeah, they have a pretty little square. They have a mayor, a woman for a mayor. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So Nick Cave's. Yeah, go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
Just agreeing with you. It's very clever songwriting and lyricism.
Yeah. We talked last week about how Tom Waits probably would be a homeless person if he wasn't in the arts. I think that applies a lot to Nick Cave as well. Nick Cave is a very interesting man, has been in a band since like the late 70s till today. He's had his addictions. He's been an alcoholic. He's had heroin addictions and things like that. He seems to be clean now. And Old Testament religion plays a big part in a lot of his music. He seems to be on a search a little bit for God. He writes a lot about God in his music.
Now, have you ever heard anything by Father John Misty?
No, I can't say I have.
This song reminded me, and everything about Nick Cave in this song, so much of Father John Misty's music. And that's spoiler, but that's who you're listening to next week.
Cool.
But
looking forward
just the piano-driven ballad and existentialism, which is, I've gathered, is a very big theme in Nick Cave's music, is searching for meaning and fulfillment and questioning aspects of religion and God. All really cool themes that can be done so well in music. And when they're done really well, are special. Otherwise they come off as trite or uninspired, but it's to me really impressive how Nick Cave talks about these themes and the subject matter. And he does so in a bit more of an accessible way than Tom Waits, which I do appreciate. Yeah,
that voice is amazing. The baritone of Nick Cave is pretty outstanding. When my first Nick Cave song I'd ever heard, I was so taken by his voice. Even before I got into his music or the lyrics or him as a person, it was the voice that sort of got me first.
Yeah, my first Nick Cave song was Red Right Hand from Peaky Blinders soundtrack, and just such a immediately distinctive song because of his voice. It's so gravelly and rough almost because of how deep it is, and very expressive, very emotive, his voice.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about Nick Cave too is he refuses to accept any awards or any award nominations. He is so afraid his ego will take over and the muse will disappear if he delves into accepting awards or accepting award nominations, that it refuses any type of anything like that, which I always found quite interesting.
I wish Kanye felt the same way about those things.
Yeah, I don't think that's a thing at the moment, is it?
No, and probably never will be, but
No.
very admirable and smart of him because,
Yeah, and
yeah,
he
we've seen
he
that
got
go poorly for artists.
yeah he got nominated for an MTV Music Award for a song he did with Kylie Minogue, and he wrote a letter saying why he wasn't accepting the nomination. And Kylie Minogue read the letter because he wouldn't even read his own letter on air, and it was a brilliant response. He was so worried that the muse would leave him that he couldn't accept anything, and he just had to stay an artist and not be concerned about commercial success.
Yeah, that's so admirable for me because while I can say that I would like to be the same way if I was in his position,
It's tough.
if I was
Yeah.
an artist, yeah, I feel like I would want to enjoy that feeling of validation and fulfillment, right? That's the thing. Yeah, I feel like it'd be very hard for anyone to say that they would stick to the same morals as Nick Cave.
So Nick Cave is a playwright. He's written books. He's acted in movies. Obviously, he's done a lot of soundtrack work. I think he's scored a few movies. So he is really an artist in every way. And I'm so happy that we have people like Nick Cave around to push the envelope and not so much worry about commercial success. Now, it's easy to not worry about commercial success when you have commercial success. I get the irony of that. But I like the fact that the art comes first, and he just has to make sure that it's on a high level and it's not tripe or bad. There's not a single Nick Cave song that I dislike. I think it's so authentic and aesthetically pleasing that I love Nick Cave so much.
Well, I'm really happy you shared your love of him with me because I've liked everything I've heard by him. And I really would like to listen to more of his music, but my issue is he's got so many albums. I don't know where to start with this guy.
Yeah. Well, this is from an album called No More Shall We Part, which was his 11th album. And it came out in the year 2001. So that was a long time ago. You were just 1 year old. So he's got a lot of albums since then. And he had a song a few years ago called Dig Lazarus. I think it was called Dig Lazarus Dig, which is about Lazarus coming back to life and how he was kind of pissed off about it that Jesus resurrected him because I think he was nice and happy and peaceful. So it's a pretty funny song too. So yeah, even that song I love, and he's probably in his 60s now, and he's still recording some amazing music.
Damn, yeah, that even that longevity is really impressive too. You don't see that the longevity and consistency too often.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, I think I was getting a little tired of just showing you hits. I wanted to change it up a little bit, and the song we have for you next week is by a huge artist, but hopefully a song by this huge artist that you've never heard of. So before we get into your song, unless there's anything else you wanted to say about Nick Cave?
No. I think I'm good on that.
All right. Darren, what did you think of the Nick Cave song?
Yeah, I didn't mind it.
Cool. All right. So let's get into some Future. Tell us all about Future.
Yes. I can't wait to talk to you about Future because the song that I've got you to listen to this week, I expect that this would be a bit of a challenge for you. It's definitely very, very different from a lot of the hip hop songs. It's got strong trap elements, some questionable lyrics at times, but I think it's a timeless song. It's one of Future's all-time best, my personal favorite, and really just a crowning achievement in his discography. And I don't know if you'd heard of Future before this song, but
I have.
He's one of the most popular artists in the industry right now. And this is a really spacey, atmospheric song. It tells the story of a man who's been driven to rock bottom and how he copes with that. It's just a great song. And Darren, why don't you just hit play on Codeine Crazy?
Codeine Crazy. Yeah.
pouring bubbly, pouring bubbly, pour that bubbly, pour that bubbly, pour that bubbly. We done went through too much. You hear me? Pour that bubbly, drink that muddy, drink that.
Okay, Codeine Crazy from Future's Monster mixtape. What did you think of this song? What are your thoughts? And what would you like to have explained? Because I'm sure you have some questions.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I liked about the song first, and then I'll mention my one critique of the song. Really good song. I'd say what he's singing about has affected a lot of people that might be going through a tough time. I read the comments on YouTube, and a lot of people stated how they were going through a bit of a tough time, and they listened to the song. And it sort of helped them through that tough time. And it sounds like the singer's going through a bit of a tough time, as you alluded to in the introduction. My one critique, and again, as a hip hop song, I think it's one of the better ones that you've shown me. My one critique is when I heard the opening parts of the song, I was kind of hoping it was going to get a little bit more fucked up. I kind of hoped that we'd have something a little bit more crazy, maybe like a bridge or some weird instruments. It was, in the end, it still stayed quite a linear song. It was him rapping over a beat. I was just a little bit of me. I was hoping it was going to get a little fucked up.
Well, now that I know that, because let me tell you, I think this is Future's best song, he's got some other ones that are really experimental, a lot more experimental than this.
Yeah.
So that's good to know for the future, pun intended.
Yeah.
And
sure.
Yeah, so I'll go into Future's backstory first, because it's something like this. This song is, I think, regarded so highly because of the context of it and who Future is. Basically, he's from Atlanta, and he came up in the Dungeon Family Collective, which is a group of hip-hop artists that, at various points, has included Outkast, Goody Mob, Killer Mike, and all of their affiliates. So Future was a part of the second generation of the Dungeon Family, Outkast being in the first generation. And that's where he was working for the first 6-7 years of his career. Just working with these guys, these really fantastic rappers, and making a name for himself in Atlanta. And then finally got a major label deal in 2011, and in the last 11 years has completely skyrocketed to becoming one of the most popular and best-selling hip-hop artists. And one thing that's cool about Future is he's considered a pioneer for trap music. Just his sounds and what he's done for trap music, he really pushed the boundaries and pushed the envelope for it, where in 2014, this song was groundbreaking, just for the different sounds and techniques.
Yeah. I like the fact that he was the only artist on the song. It was his vision, and everything that had to be said was said by him. I don't know if he does features, but it sounds like he's a hip-hop artist, so he's probably featured on other songs, and a lot of hip-hop artists have featured on his songs. But I do like the fact that he had a clear vision for the song, and it was it's a very personal song. You can tell that right away.
Yeah, so Future, he's absolutely, like you said, a hip-hop artist. He does have features on some of his music, but this song occupies a very important place in his career, and the mixtape it's from as well. Future is thought of as having one of the best runs in hip-hop music of all time, because he released this mixtape, Monster, in October 2014, the one that Codeine Crazy's from, and this was the beginning of him redefining his career in his own terms. He used to be this major label pop ringtone rapper, sort of.
Right.
And when this mixtape came out, it only had one feature. It wasn't available commercially. It was a free mixtape. Only had one feature on 11 songs, that being Lil Wayne. And this song was the outro on it. And it sort of marked this huge turning point in Future's career, where he, as you said, started executing his vision for his music he was pushing the sounds he wanted, and he really focused in on making a certain type of music. So this mixtape came out in October, and then in January he released another mixtape that was also critically acclaimed, did very well. 2 months later in March he released another mixtape, which was also incredible. And then in July of 2015, so again a few months later, he released his magnum opus album. It's called Dirty Sprite 2. If you look up a list of from publications of best trap albums of all time, Dirty Sprite 2 is always going to be up there. And then in September of that year, a few months after July, he released a collab album with Drake that was like #1 for months and months on end. So that's a pretty impressive year for any artist, really.
Right. Yeah. That's a pretty good output, especially when we talk about, artists not having that much of an output when it comes to music anymore. It seems to be years in between projects.
Yeah, no doubt. And it really helped him take over and catapulted him. And like I said, reinvented his career. And part of that is Future identified his own lane, his own vision of music. And he's considered a pioneer because the way he takes the traditional lyrics of like what we think about trap music, like flexing money, cars, women, drug dealing, all very prominent in his music, but it's the production that he uses. It's so futuristic and atmospheric. And the production also, when it comes to his voice, is something really cool. And I'm surprised you didn't mention the auto-tune that he uses.
Well, that is in my notes. I was about to bring that up. It sounded to me, obviously there was some auto-tune on this track, but it also sounded to me at the beginning that it was, is his vocals slowed down a little bit, or is that him?
Okay. Excellent question.
It felt like they were just a little bit slow.
Well, that kind of brings me to the main ethos of Future, which is he is all about raw emotion, raw feeling, and lean being the other thing. Do you know what lean is?
No. So
lean is the nickname for the drink that is made when one combines codeine, prescription cough syrup, with Sprite and Jolly Ranchers, and it's a purple beverage. You drink it in 2 styrofoam cups.
Okay.
And especially at the time in Atlanta and the South, lean was an epidemic. I mean, still is. It's you're drinking an opioid basically, and sort of became Future's trademark in a way. He's got tons of songs talking about it. He's got albums named after Dirty Sprite. And what's cool is he manipulates his vocals to really sound drugged out. And that's why at times it sounds a bit slow, robotic, stiff. It's really to emulate that sort of drugged out, leaned out, hazy feeling.
Yeah, which is great because there should be an experimentation into music and whether you add vocal effects to your songs, and to be writing about drugs obviously is big in the hip hop community, but it's in modern music. That is pretty much what modern music, is. There's a lot of songs written about drugs, so it's following a long list of music about that.
No doubt, Future just became the lean rapper. He
right. Yeah.
He established himself as the guy that raps about lean, and did it very well.
Well, when we talked about the Manchester scene and the hacienda and the early rave scene, it was music to take drugs to drop acid to, or MDMA or whatever. So that there's a long line of music that fits in a very specific drug lane.
Absolutely. And that's a really crazy connection. I'm not sure if anyone's ever drawn a connection between the Manchester house scene and Future, but I love it because you're so right. Really.
Yeah.
And I must say, when I first listened to Future in 2015, I had a hard time with it because I was used to rappers like Kendrick, Kanye, Childish Gambino, Chance the Rapper, who are a bit more traditional. And so when I heard Future with tons and tons of auto-tune and vocal effects, I was like, I didn't know what to think about it, and it had to grow on me. And I think what's important to note about Future is he doesn't use autotune to make himself sing better, to make himself sound like a better singer. And he actually, this is from an interview he did. He said he doesn't do it to make him sound like a better singer. It's to convey raw emotion and feeling, and it allows him to stretch and deteriorate his vocals and just make it sound, number one, different, number two, cool, and number three, how he's feeling when he's recording the song, which is all cool stuff, I think, even if it's polarizing.
Well, when I mentioned earlier that I was kind of hoping the song was going to get a little bit fucked up and a little bit weird. I think experimentation, and we talked about this earlier, experimentation is really important. I watch a lot of videos of, people your age hearing the Beatles for the first time, or, David Bowie or Queen or whatever. And I got into this little thing of watching people your age listening to A Day in the Life by the Beatles. And I think you know that song. And the big thing about Day in the Life, there's a huge instrumental break, and the song completely shifts from John Lennon's dreamy vocals to Paul McCartney waking up in the morning when the alarm goes off and running for the bus. And there's such a big change between those two songs. And the confusion over people's faces when that happens is quite interesting to me, because I think songs now, and again, I'm generalizing, don't get me wrong, but songs now have a very linear feel to them, where I think back in the day, the Beatles, obviously the Beatles were the most successful band of all time. They could experiment and they didn't have to play these songs live because they stopped being a live band. So they could definitely do whatever they wanted in the studio. But the experimentation is really important. So I'm glad that you brought up that Future is that person where he experiments with his music, which is great.
He absolutely does. And I think that's why he's so highly regarded for in his lane. Now, as time has gone on, he's still on his albums. He'll still have a bunch of songs that are definitely more commercially geared and aren't as experimental. I don't think he'll ever return to the peak that he was at when he went on the run I was talking about, from October 2014 to September 2015. That was just a musician in his prime. Like, if we want to talk about just pure quality of his output in that time, it was like Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo, how he had that prime.
He did have that good 4 years, yeah.
Yeah, he was just absolutely like one of the best on the planet. And then it didn't last very long, but he was the best player of all time for that period.
Yeah.
That's what Future is like. And if you talk to people who are fans of him in this run, it's like they get misty-eyed and thinking back about these 3 mixtapes and 2 albums. But one last thing I wanted to touch on this song is, as you said, he's talking about personal struggles, right? Issues on this song, emotions and feelings. And that's really rare for Future, especially at this point in his discography. He has always had this reputation of being the poster child for toxicity and making bad decisions and being involved in drug dealing and doing drugs and all of these things. Vulnerability is not a word anyone would ever associate with Future until he made this song. And this mixtape as a whole, honestly, the mixtape is very vulnerable. And that's because it came right after his breakup with Ciara, the artist, Russell Wilson's wife, apparently. So they were engaged. Future and Ciara had a very bad breakup, and then he made this album. And so when you get to Codeine Crazy, the outro on the album, and it's just so raw and vulnerable and talking about his issues and this breakup, how he's using substances and carnal pleasures to drown his sorrows, his battles with addiction. It's so rare, not just for Future, but for the genre as a whole, to hear this level of vulnerability. And I think that's what makes it so special, so memorable, and what makes it really resonate with people, as it did in the YouTube comments for this song.
Yeah, soul music to me can can expand many different genres. I don't think soul music, to me, strictly represents soul sound in music. I think soul music's anytime an artist opens up and reveals something about themselves. So this would mean that this song would fit in my criteria for soul music.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's just a really big milestone song in the genre, because when you think of other trap artists, they're not going to make a song like this,
Right.
where they admit that they struggle with addiction and that they know that these drugs are killing them. I mean, Future literally says in the song, "Drowning an activist," which is a Codeine brand, "Drowning an activist suicide. I'm an addict. I can't even hide it." Um, he's being real, which is rare in a genre that is so focused on flexing and about your image and appearing macho. All of these things that are not associated with honesty and introspection. And I think for people who like when we listen to music, we listen to it to reflect how we're feeling, to help us cope with how we're feeling. But if someone only ever listens to trap music, that's the only genre they like, they would never get that sort of feeling from music until they heard Codeine Crazy by Future. And now all of a sudden they hear an artist talk about their problems, their addictions, their struggles in life. And maybe they think, wait, he's human too. This artist that I idolize, he's human. He struggles with things. He's not perfect. And it's okay that he's not perfect.
Right.
I think that's a really important message. And in other genres, it doesn't apply because there's more honesty and vulnerability in other types of music by default.
Yeah.
Not in trap music. And I think that's why this song resonates so much with a lot of people.
All right. For educational purposes, can you please briefly explain trap music?
Absolutely. So trap is a subgenre of hip hop based in the South, and it's really all about fast-paced beats, highly focused around synthetic drums. And when you think trap music, or when I think trap music, I think really heavy 808s, like booming bass kick drums, and those really fast, rapid hi-hats.
Right.
Stuff that would just rattle a car as it drives past. And a heavy focus on melody and rhythm over writing, like your pen game. Lyricism takes a back seat to just, how does it sound? Can you vibe to it? Does it flow well? That's trap music.
And very different than the LA sound or the California sound or the New York sound. Very different.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think more lyrical when I think of those sounds. Trap music is much more so about just enjoying the sonics. Definitely not as lyrical. I think of artists like Young Thug and Gunna, who we did an episode on.
Yeah.
Guys like that. They embody trap music.
And that's the great thing about hip hop, really, is that while you have the New York sound and the LA sound that sort of can dominate people's thoughts of what hip hop is, you have the Southern sound, you have trap, you have artists coming out of New Orleans, you have artists coming out of Florida. There's so much different dialects, and I'll use that expression of hip hop music.
Absolutely, yeah. It is very much like a dialect. It's just so many subgenres, and I could rant for days about how antiquated the name hip hop is, or that the genre has become way too broad to adequately describe the music.
Sure,
but that's a subject for another episode.
Of course, yeah, we can definitely get into that in future episodes. Should we ask Darren what he thought of the song?
Sure, Darren, what'd you think?
Yeah, not really for me.
Cool.
I figured, but it's a really good song.
Tell me about your song for next week.
Yeah, so for next week, as I said, we're going to delve into Father John Misty, and it's going to be a song called Total Entertainment Forever. I think you're going to love it. It's a sad, drunk man sitting at a piano.
Cool.
Singing about the world.
Like the sound of that. And you're going to listen to a David Bowie song called I'm Afraid of Americans. I don't know if you know this song.
No, I know Young Americans.
No. And this features someone. It features Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails. So there you go. It's my first feature.
Wow, milestone.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
So again, this is a
I love
song.
Bowie.
Yeah, this is a song a little bit later in Bowie's career. Obviously not before he died, but maybe 10, 15 years ago when this song was released. And one of my favorite David Bowie songs.
Awesome. I can't wait. I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too. No, it's a great song. Cool. Let's get into This Week in Movie History.
This Week in Movie History.
So previously in other episodes, we did This Week in Music History, but and when we play a number one song from my year of birth, 1973, and then we play a number one song from Nick's year of birth, which is the year 2000. But that quickly came around, so we couldn't do that one anymore. So instead, we're doing what the number one movie was in 1973 and what the number one movie was in the year 2000. And we have two very interesting movies, two movies I've never seen and two movies I've never heard of. The one in 1973 is called Lady Kung Fu, and it's a Hong Kong movie. And I'll explain to you after Darren plays a little bit of the trailer of why this was the number one movie in America. So Darren, there's no soundtrack to this. I couldn't find a soundtrack. So let's play a little bit of the trailer.
Here comes the lethal lady of Kung Fu, Hong Kong Hellcat.
So the trailer of this movie is just about her just kicking ass. And she has really long hair and she has knives in her hair. And so she whips it around and cuts people with her hair, which is pretty funny. So why did a low budget movie from Hong Kong be the number one movie in America in 1973 this week? Do you have any idea why that might be?
God, I have no idea. Like I did not think martial arts movies crossed over that early.
Okay. There's a very specific reason. Bruce Lee died in July of 1973.
Oh.
And thus entered into the most prolific kung fu phase in American cinema history, where you had Enter the Dragon came out a month after he had died and made $200 million, which would be equivalent to today's money of $2 billion at the box office.
Oh my God.
It was like kung fu movies at this time were absolutely huge. And what does Hollywood love? They love making a buck.
They sure do.
So that's when they got all these other kung fu movies from Hong Kong come in and they just put them up in cinemas. And that's why Lady Kung Fu was the number one movie in 1973 at this week.
You said she had knives in her hair? That sounds sick.
Yeah, she has like these knives in her hair, and she does in the trailer. I haven't seen the movie; I just saw this in the trailer, and she sort of whips her hair around and uses her hair as a weapon, which is pretty funny.
Nice. I'm gonna have to check out the trailer.
Yeah, pretty good. And in the year 2000, another movie I'd never heard of before called The Watcher, starring Keanu Reeves and James Spader. Darren, just play. There's a funny story to this movie, so just play one of the songs off the soundtrack, which is by White Zombie. All right, so what's that? I don't even know what that song's called. What's that song called, Darren?
How to Make a Monster.
How to Make a Monster. Okay, so I'd never heard of this movie, so I did a quick look up to see what it was about. So Keanu Reeves plays a serial killer, and James Spader plays a cop, which is a bit of a weird one. When I first read it, I thought James Spader would be the serial killer and Keanu Reeves would be the cop, but it's the reverse. And James Spader can't find out who the serial killer is, so he quits the police force and moves to a small town. And then Keanu Reeves follows him to the small town and starts killing people the same way in the town that James Spader has moved into to sort of taunt him. Now, the weird thing about this movie is that Keanu Reeves never wanted to make this movie, but his assistant forged his signature on the contract. And instead of fighting a legal battle to get out of it, he just decided to do the movie.
That's crazy. Like, surely he fired that assistant immediately, right?
I'm guessing that happened, yeah. But I'd never heard of this movie, and it was the number one movie this week in the year 2000.
Fair enough. Yeah, I never heard of it either, but I wonder if it's any good.
I might have to check it out. It sounds interesting. Again, I would have reversed those two roles because James Spader is a bit of a weirdo, and Keanu Reeves more plays the hero, I guess, the good guy. Yeah, it's a bit different. That's pretty much the end of the podcast. What are you guys up to for the rest of the week?
Well, I'm going to a music festival this weekend.
Who's playing?
It's it's called Rolling Loud, and it's an entirely hip hop music festival. It's at Ontario Place, and I'm seeing a lot of my favorite artists actually for the first time, like Lil Uzi Vert on Friday, who he did Neon Guts, which you liked.
Yep, I liked Uzi
and then
Vert.
I'm seeing Future headline on Saturday night. He's closing out the festival. Well, day 2 of the festival, so that's going to be cool. And yeah, there's even rumors that your favorite Drake will show up.
Oh, God.
Given that it's happening in his backyard.
It is, yeah. I'd leave if that happened. Hope people boo when they think it's Kendrick supposed to be coming out or something.
Yeah. I don't think that'll happen in Toronto, but we'll see. We'll see.
And the great thing about you living downtown now is technically you could walk home.
Yeah, it is at the Ontario Place, so
it's a bit far. Yeah.
But it's nice to not have to worry about taking the GO train back or having to get a hotel. I can just take the streetcar back to my house.
Cool. I have the weekend off, thankfully, so I have literally nothing going on this weekend. So I might hang out with Darren tomorrow if the weather is okay. We wanted to do some photography tomorrow, but it might rain, but we'll see how it goes. Darren, other than maybe tomorrow, what are you up to for the rest of the week?
No, just editing.
Cool. We have a really interesting independent artist this week. His name is Oktaf Kanis, and I hope I'm saying that right. He's from Indonesia. So we're going to listen to some Indonesia rock and roll, which is fantastic. I think one of the reasons why I like this podcast so much is because we've heard bands from Australia, Canada, America, Northern Ireland. We listened to a punk band from Italy, and now we're listening to someone from Indonesia. Like, how cool is that? Like, that's a pretty good range of different artists that we're listening to.
It's really a global podcast we've got here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Super cool.
And the song we're listening to is called Coming from the Dark Side. So this is Oktaf Kanis with Coming from the Dark Side. And gentlemen, we will talk to you next week.
I've got mine for my life. You got a diamond in your blood. I've got mine for my life. You got a diamond in your blood. I'm sure if I find the door, nobody wanna make her roll. She likes to hold me. I know she's number 4, she's wanna play the ball. She's can't take me. Hello, she's coming from the dark side. She's coming from the dark side. Hello. She's coming from the dark side. Hello. She's coming from the dark side. She's coming tonight. She's coming tonight. I'm sure if I find the door, nobody wanna make her roll. She likes to hold me. I know she's number 4, she's wanna play the ball. She's can't take me. She's coming from the dark side. Hello. She's coming from the dark side. Hello, she's coming from the dark side. Hello, she's coming from the dark side. I've got mine for my life. You got a diamond in your blood. I've got mine for my life. You got a diamond in your blood. I've got mine for my life. You got a diamond in your blood. I've got mine for my life. You got a diamond in your blood. Hello, she's coming from the dark side. 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 She's coming tonight. She's coming tonight.
You've been listening to Just Hit Play. To contact your hosts, Peter and Nick, or to be featured on an episode as musical talent, email justhitplay7300@gmail.com. Keep up to date with news and announcements by following on Instagram and Facebook, linked in the show notes. Subscribe on your favourite podcatcher to tune in next week for more sonic delights. And if you can't wait till then, check out the Just Hit playlist on Spotify, linked in the show notes. A special thanks to Braden Munch for the theme song, and thank you for listening.